Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerd Doug, and tonight I am going to engage in a classic conversation with this nerd, which is powered by D&D Beyond. And down below, you'll find a link not just to D&D Beyond, but to Nerdarchy's own out-of-the-box encounters and a special portal that we have just for our stuff there. So go check that out. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Nerdarchy Dave, and tonight we're talking about classic D&D monsters, which I'm sure you'll find some of those classic D&D monsters if you go through that D&D Beyond portal. Mm-hmm. And if you're familiar with them, they're basically we have the encounter builder over there linked to the different encounters or whatever. So there's a couple that don't have it because it's not really a fight, because that's not what the book is. But yeah.
But I have had quite a fun day since we decided on this topic that you pitched, of just going through old monster manuals and being like, oh yeah, this one's cool, and sort of doing a little research of comparing different, like, you know, top 10 iconic D&D monsters, classic monsters, polls on Reddit, and just kind of seeing the similarities there. That's been quite fun for me as well.
Oh man, Mage's musing. Let us not forget the mighty Ear Seeker.
That sounds like something that was in the Fiend Folio, I would guess.
It was just something that was going to kill you. Like you had very little chance of surviving it. Rock grubs were like that too.
Yep, that was, and the picture of that is so gross. I remember even as a kid just thinking like, oh, God. And it's funny because like all these horrible monsters, but it's just like that picture of the guy with his arm and all the grubs. And he's like, like, oh God.
Well, you know, it kind of makes me think of a little bit, only in reverse, because the rock grubs are going in, not out. But it makes me think of Poltergeist.
Yeah.
You remember when he's scratching his face and the maggots start dropping out?
Ear Seekers in the Monster Manual 1. I was looking through that all day. I know there's a Thought Eater. I didn't see that one. I meant to go look.
Yeah, there's definitely a Thought Eater. And you know what's the worst thing about the Thought Eater 1? It is probably going to kill you. You're not going to know about it. But then if you ever do see it, it just looks stupid.
Oh yeah, it looks like a skeletal platypus or something. Right? Yeah,
like add injury to insult with that death.
Yeah, it's like that's what's eating my thoughts. Come on.
I don't believe the molds.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to respond to Chris. Yeah, I don't believe the molds were monsters.
Green slime is, at least, in puddings and things. I don't know about yellow mold, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's not mold. But
Didn't green slime get downgraded, though, in 5e?
Yeah, it's just like a hazard.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense, because it's like, you're not really, like, fighting it.
Yeah.
And it's like, sure, you can swing your sword at it. It's just probably going to dissolve it. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many classic monsters that were just bringing back a lot of memories, and you know, many of them obviously.
We can see how many people are old people in the chat, right? By just like all the monsters are yelling out.
Yeah. Rainbow, Fappers, Lurkers.
Yeah.
And as we were just talking about ahead of time, like a lot of monsters, you know, it's like their purpose is just like to deplete your resources, like the classic Rust monster there. It's like not that hard, but you know, it's gonna you know, eat up your weapons and stuff. Or one you had mentioned before, the Golden Gorger, the Orumvirax. It's like, you know, it's like a 6-legged badger, but it like eats your gold and stuff. So it's like, yeah, sure, it's probably not that dangerous, but it's going to eat up your gold. And that's
no, I think they were dangerous. I think they were pretty vicious. But I mean, I'm going off of my memory, which is it was a long time ago, and my
I don't know, you have a pretty good memory for D&D monsters.
That's it. It doesn't extend to that. Don't ask me what happened yesterday, right?
Yeah.
But like, my brain is trapped in like my early 20s and before. That's it.
Sure.
But did they damage your armor? I feel like they damaged your armor when they hit you or something.
Rust monsters?
No, the Golden Gorgers.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
But so the reason why we're doing this topic is because I saw that WizKids are doing classic D&D monster molds. And
based on their visuals from the original appearance.
Yeah, based on the 1E monster manual, and like they're doing them in sections, so they're not doing. It doesn't seem like they're doing a lot, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be blind blisters. You're just going to get like the A to C pack, and you just know what's in there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's like $99.99 or something like that.
But it's a Ankeg, a Basilisk, a Beholder, a Belay, Carrion Crawler, Chimera, Cockatrice, and the Coltal, but I'm probably saying that wrong.
I always said coatl.
I would trust your pronunciation over mine.
But yeah, right. So yeah, it seemed like they were just going right down the list of like even like white box monsters, which we predict the next set will probably start off with the Displacer Beast because that's the most classic one.
Oh man, if it's $99, dude, that's like $10 a mini.
Well, there's Wiz Kids knows there's a lot of nerds with a lot of disposable income out there.
Yeah, that must be it. But I just know when I saw that list, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, these are like my go-to monsters that I generally use most of the time. At least like work some of them. Like Ankeg is like my all-time favorite. You're in the wilderness encounter monster.
Really? Yeah. It's funny because it's like I don't remember. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure I've never used one as a DM. And like we were talking about beforehand, I might have faced them, but I played a lot of modules as a kid, so it's like there's just all kind of monsters in there. So I probably fought them, but it wasn't like it was just probably like in our way or whatever. So it wasn't.
Yeah, I just used one recently, but it didn't end up being a combat encounter, because I had this Thrycreen merchant that had I think he was using a carrion crawler as his like mount because he's a merchant. He had all of his wares on it, and then he had a couple of giant centipede pets, and then he had like an Ankeg watchdog that would burrow and follow them.
Oh, nice.
So it's like it was kind of in there, like, okay, the party can fight this guy and try and take his stuff or talk to him, whatever. And they opted to talk to him. So for the current campaign, that's been our carrion crawler and our Ankeg appearance. Last game for which was that? Court of Worms, I definitely had a carrion crawler attack them. Matter of fact, it obliterated their kobold lackey. Like I think most of the party was disheartened but Ted's character, and he came on board to be Ted's character's apprentice, artificer, but he's playing a lizard folk, and he played him very cold and dispassionate. Sure. And he was just like, meh.
Carrion crawler's got to eat too, man.
Yeah, and everyone else was like, no, Timmy.
Yeah, I've always loved carrion crawlers. I think, like I said, I had the toy as a kid. So, I mean, I had a lot of the line of toys, but I remember that one, and I've always been fond of them. I like underground adventures a lot, and they're pretty frequent down there. They also show up in our own Kobold Cavalry module as a potential mount for your Kobold team, because you can fit quite a few kobolds on a carrion crawler's back.
Well, they're a nasty monster to just throw into the mix, because it's not that they do a lot of damage, but they get a lot of attacks. And every time they attack, you have to save versus being paralyzed.
Yep.
And if you fail, your life is going to suck.
Yep, for sure. And they can go up like they got sticky legs, and they're basically just giant bugs, which I guess in a way is a classic D&D, maybe even not like a D&D exclusive thing, but just giant critters and animals and bugs, which, to me, like I say all the time, like that's somewhat grosser or scarier than any monster, because it's like, I mean, people get freaked out by seeing a regular centipede in your bathroom in the middle of the night when it's 10 feet long. It's kind of scary. Or like you said, giant weasels we were talking about. That's like they drain your blood, and there's giant crocodiles, wasps, and all kinds of crazy stuff in those old adventures.
Yeah, I mean the carrion crawler is like, what if we took an octopus and put it on top of a giant centipede? Yeah,
because they get like 6 attacks, right? Like, because all those things are just like
I don't know if it's 6 or 8, but it's a bunch. Yeah.
But it's like each one of those little things are basically
each tentacle is an attack. And they can hang from the ceiling, right? So it's just like, it's great. Like, they're just hanging on the ceiling. Players walk by, and it's just like, bloop, just drop all their tentacles down.
Yeah, they're going to get somebody.
Yeah.
That's why adventuring ain't easy, man.
Well, that's what happened to the kobold. He got grabbed, and then it took off once it had him paralyzed. It's like,
In the very first original in Jeff's Quest, the very first monster they faced was a Boule, hence the famous Boule Mignon. And I was actually a little worried right then because I was like, this thing's going to be like, it was not going good for them just fighting one monster with, and even though they had the action economy on it and stuff, it's like, they're no slouch.
I did, in the Scarlet Sisterhood, I did like a Boule mating ground.
Oh my god!
That the characters kind of went through, and so it was just it was only 3 of them, right? But it was like 2 males.
But Kenna was probably in mortal danger there, especially, right?
Kenna was in mortal danger, and
they
there
love
was
that halfling flesh.
2 males that were fighting over the female. So like they didn't get involved; they were too busy with each other. But then the female noticed that the party's trying to sneak by in their wagon, and like their wagon got wrecked. And like I think they ended up just mostly fleeing.
Yeah, was a horse pulling the wagon.
Yeah.
That's another fave of theirs, right?
Yeah,
a lot of those classic monsters goes in great detail, like what they like to eat, and like specific flesh that they enjoy and stuff.
Like remember gnolls? Gnolls were like prefer living sentient creatures because they like the way they scream.
I think manticores also liked horse and human flesh, right?
I don't remember, but that sounds about right.
And probably a lot of that, again, just it's like, well, the monsters, they weren't there for like narrative reasons. They were there to like F with you and make your adventure hard. So it's just like, like the manticore's penchant for horse flesh was probably just because it's like, well, these PCs on the horses are making my wilderness part of my adventure not as fun. So I'm just going to make a monster that likes eating horses.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in our first 5e campaign, we could not keep horses to save our lives. Like, we went through so many horses. At
it's
a certain point,
yeah. It's a tough thing to have.
Show up.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to do any kind of like dungeon delving with any regularity, like, cause believe me, I totally get the appeal of like, having a mount and, like role playing that or having characters that like, that's a part of your adventure. But it's like, dude, if you leave it out in the wilderness and go down there for a couple of days, that ain't going to be there when you get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you can just magic it up in 5th edition with Fine Steed and stuff like that.
We kept waking up like the next morning and having our mounts were murdered.
Yeah. Although with how easy it is for Centaur characters to adventure, it's like, yeah, sure, just bring your horse down there in the dungeon with you and climb up the ladder and shit.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, I mean, they're not large either, so.
What?
Centaurs.
Oh.
So the fitting places part at least by climbing. So listen, you just gotta be a 9th level monk centaur. Then you can run up walls and across.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Then it's no longer an issue.
I did think it was interesting the cockatrice in the AD&D Monster Manual. In some ways, I think it looks kind of cooler and scarier than the full color painted art in the 5e Monster Manual.
I will say, like, the Displacer Beast. I like the Displacer Beast from 1E more than I did from 3rd. Because the 3rd, it looked really like almost skeleton emaciated. Yeah. But 5E did a nice job of blending 3rd and 1st to make something really cool. I actually would like to get a Displacer Beast. I think Ted wants one too.
I think I've seen that at the tat shop that I used to go to, like that, or maybe it's just Panther that looks a lot like that.
There's the classic, like it's a specific art style. I don't know if they call it like the a Sailor Eddie or Philadelphia. It's like regional to this area art style where it is the Panther like clinging on, and I kind of want to get that, but done as a Displacer Beast in that style.
A lot of the classic monsters that I enjoy and that caught my eye too are the illustrator was Dave Trampier, who's just fantastic. Definitely the best artist in that particular monster manual, I think. Outside of those, I was thinking about like, well, what other ones were classic to me? You know, and again, like we said, it's like,
Yeah.
well, those are in alphabetical order, and they'll probably have another set. But like I said, the Displacer Beast, Doppelganger. I've always thought it's a classic D&D monster, just because it's it's a different sort of monster that doesn't really just attack on sight. It's like that F's with you in a different way by just like picking off one of the guy in the back and replacing them and stuff. Plus, the art was just really creepy and weird looking.
Yeah, you're saying you think in the second set, Displacer Beast will probably be one of the first ones.
Yeah, because I was looking up like what monsters were in the white box, and it was just like in the same order. It was like Ankeg, Basilisk, Beholder, Boule, Carrion Crawler, Chimera, Cactuase, Quaddle, and then Displacer Beast was the next one. So I was like, oh, that's got to be it.
Yeah, they'll probably. I mean, I guess they're probably going to do what 4 or 5 sets, maybe 6 sets.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's a lot of classic things. Like there's only 4 monsters that are in the system reference document, and 2 of them are in that classic monster set, the Beholder and the Carrion Crawler. So I can only imagine the other 2 will also be in that set, one of which is the Displacer Beast, and the 4th one is the one we were joking about before with the Umber Hulk, which is total classic D&D monster that looks lame as AF in the monster manual back then. But
they got to do an owlbear, right? They're probably going to do an owlbear, I would say.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Flatness Cube, maybe.
Yeah,
Rust Monster, they got to.
Rust Monster. Although I would say like the gelatinous cube would be like. Is there really a difference between the art from that one to the any of the other versions?
That's a good point.
So maybe not that one, but who knows? I could be wrong.
Zorn. That's got to be in there, right?
Zorn? I don't know. Like that, I don't think I think of Zorn when I think of D&D.
I think I do in the sense of like I'm thinking of ones that are like they were created for D&D. Oh man, that's one of my favorite monsters.
Maybe the AD&D troll.
Oh yeah. Well, they did do a couple of years ago. I think they were based on Richard Witter's drawings, that classic icons that where they had the owl bear that were based on. They were like cool sculpts based on that original art. So like the owlbear had that like bowl cut and stuff. It just didn't look.
Like, I guess they got to do a MindFlayer.
Yeah.
I really like the Dragoon, but I don't think that would make the cut. I don't know about Periton.
The Periton's weird, and yeah, it is a cool looking monster. Dragon is definitely sweet. Is the Periton that thing that's like its shadow looks like a human?
Yeah.
Gorgers.
Oh yeah, Zorn. Yeah, Zorn might make it in there. Like
just because it's like that seems like a original D&D monster. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm completely wrong. I always think obviously they're going to do a mimic of some sort. Even though again that's another monster, I'm like, do they really like need to like? It's a chest with a fist coming out of it, pretty much always, or with teeth or something. But what I was actually why I said no to the Zorn. I know what I was thinking of. I was thinking of it's that crazy panda bear looking monster, and I think it's like called a Zebo or Zorro or something. It's a Z, not an X.
Oh, okay.
And it also probably wasn't in the Monster Manual. It was probably like Monster Manual 2.
Yeah. Naga, that was always a favorite of mine. The different kinds of Nagas. I always thought.
You think they'll do like a Pit Fiend?
I don't know. I mean, that's pretty classic.
Or a Balor. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say.
The white looked awesome in the original Monster Manual.
Yeah, that was another
pretty classic, right? Yeah.
That was another go-to though. I'd like to pull out.
Oh yeah, they're great. Ghouls. I mean, that's not really too difference. The troglodyte, which there's just not enough troglodytes in my experience with D&D. They don't seem to get used too much in it, like official adventures. I've never used them. I know you have extensively.
But honestly, like that's why it got used in my game, right? Like.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. So if anyone, you can still find it on the channel. There's like over 60 episodes of the Scarlet Sisterhood where the main monsters for a long time, or at least reoccurring monsters, were troglodytes, because a player specifically said, I want to encounter troglodytes because they never show up. So kind of to what you're saying, it's like, yeah, they don't show up.
But yeah, it's a great monster with a cool twist to it, and again, you know, I like subterranean type adventures and things, so it fit right in there. Yeah, so many enchantments since Eye of the Deep. I believe Ted just used that in your We Live on a Boat campaign recently.
Yeah. I meant to come back to that comment, but yeah. So in Ted made a pirate captain, and we had to raid his warehouse and steal his ill-gotten goods, and it was a Eye of the Deep, but it was the Bones mini. And it looked fantastic, and he did a great job painting it. I think we talked about it a little bit, like right after, like the Monday after that encounter happened, on the chat. But just because, one, it is such a cool classic monster, but the other thing that was super cool is like one of our players, Pratima, is very new to the hobby, and she like Instagrammed it. She changed her social media profile pics to the picture of the monster.
Well, that's got to feel good as a DM to have that kind of impact.
Yeah, it was definitely super cool.
I just totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, you guys lucked out too. I was just Ted. Sometimes he'll talk, he'll call me and just be like, "Oh, I was thinking of running for those guys," and he was trying to think of a monster, and I was pushing him for him to use a Mareed. He's like, "That's too hard." This way. I'm like, "He's talking about these guys trounce all your things." He's like, "It's like CR11. They're only 5th level." I'm like, "That'll be fine."
He told me that, and I went and looked it up. I was like, "Oh, we would have trashed this thing."
See, yeah, that's what
because it's got spells, but none of its spells are useful. So.
And I was and like, you know, we were looking at the lore, and it said it could be easily distracted by like flattery and like fantastical tales, and I was like, maybe they'll, you know, I was like, well, if you kind of hint to that and stuff, like they could take advantage of that and everything. He's like, no, that's too hard. I was like,
I'm glad he went with the and also like I guess it was like he had to make up the stat block. I think he took one of the other Beholder like monsters and modified that.
Do they have Eye of the Deep in 5e?
I don't know. I don't think there is. But it was a cool encounter, and he did a good job of making the monster.
Yeah, he does.
And I was having to deal with the eye rays, so there's that. But speaking of the mirrored, Afridi, what do you think? Are they going to do an Afridi?
I don't know. It's got cool art. I like Afridis as well.
That felt like, I mean,
out of all those 4 things, I think that's the only one I've ever actually like used.
Wasn't it on the DMG cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the art was really cool for that in there. I think that's a Trampier one as well.
Yeah, I don't know. So they definitely have to probably use that.
Yeah. Well, here's a classic one for you that I have used several times. The Atyug. Totally gross creature, totally D&D.
That is totally what I was thinking about when I was like, yes, if you check the link below for the D&D Beyond portal, that's one of the monsters for sure, the Atyug.
Yep.
Well, the Atyug and the Mimic, right? So they're together.
A friend in need.
Mm.
Yeah, Atyugs are just gross, but yeah, it's just like a big garbage monster, basically. And again, something with like it's like, yes, they have like hit points and they do a lot of damage, but like, you know, a lot of the classic monsters, they also just do something special too. It's like they, you know, like Atyugs, they cause disease, and like all the other ones, like Basilics turn you stone, you know, they all have some kind of special thing about them. It's neat.
Yeah. What came out first, New Hope or D&D?
Oh, D&D. D&D is like 74.
Yeah. Do you think the trash monster? Do you think the trash monster in the New Hope?
Maybe it did have like a little stock with the eyes on it, right? Yeah, I could see that. Sure.
I used the Atyug. Actually, I used one of the dragon templates from 5e, one of the few templates there is a half dragon, on top of the Atyug in my first 5e campaign.
Ouch.
And
that sounds pretty terrifying.
Yeah, so the kobolds, the kobold tribes worshipped it. Okay. And that's how they got the game of Rat Ball, because it would vomit things out. And one of the things it vomited out was a bunch of rats that were like stuck together by
Okay.
mucus. So they sewed them together, and that was the first rat ball.
Hmm.
And that's how and that's how the tradition of rat ball began.
Hmm.
For anyone that doesn't know, rat ball. So rat ball is a kobold game, and they decided instead of going to war with each other, the ruling tribe would be the one that won the rat ball tournament. So the tribes would come together and have a tournament, and the players showed up during the tournament, and the kobolds decided to field the players because they kept losing to the one side because they had an ogre that they chained into the goal, and by just being big and bulky, it would just block all the shots.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use an ad tag in my home Spelljammer campaign that I ran for several years. That it was the party was trying to sneak through this bandit asteroid base, and they didn't want to. They wanted to take the back way, so they cut through basically the toilet hole. And sure enough, there was an Otyug down there. So they didn't have to fight all the gang and stuff, but they did get pretty filthy and.
Filth fever, man. Filth fever.
Yep, I believe at least two of the players or characters contracted that. Oh, there's a question.
There is
For
a
those
question.
of us who skipped editions, never. What are some classic monsters from second, third, and fourth that should find their way? Man, there's so. For me, I'm at the age and with Swiss cheese memory, even with having a good memory, I don't remember which editions.
They all blurred together, and a lot of the same monsters were carried from tradition to from edition to edition. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of them got redesigns. Like if you look at the original orcs, or they look like pig people.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they became more of a player race, with half orcs, they made them less and less piggy looking, right, into something different. A lot of the monsters are from first edition. I feel like the monsters that were really iconic in first edition, they just stayed iconic throughout all the editions.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't think of a monster that came later and kind of replaced any of the other ones, because also they did a lot of variants and different versions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would be really hard pressed.
Right.
See, Scott's like a Ferrum. I don't even remember what that is.
Yeah,
maybe if I seen it,
Yeah. Christopher Child says it's not the first edition Mummy. It was pretty tough. That was on my list as one of my faves. I still will contend that the fifth edition Mummy is really tough. Only if you actually think of the stat block as a whole. People are like, they're vulnerable to fire, and they only got so many hit points. Sure. And then it seems really easy that you beat them, and then the next day they just come back, and then they come back, and they just keep pulling out locust swarms in a regional area and stuff. It's what's on the little stat block, pretty weak, but it's when you consider that they come back all the time and they have massive regional effects, and if you're in their lair, it's you're going to be pretty weak by the time you get there. And if you cast a spell, you take necrotic damage every time when you're in their lair. They ain't no slouches.
I want to say the kind of the funniest thing. Oh, I guess we'll probably get an intellect devourer too.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't get the Catoblepus.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of my faves. I've always liked the death cow.
But maybe the design hasn't changed enough for them to make a new one.
That's true.
But the funny thing that I'm noticing, because I pulled up just one monster images, is how many of the monsters just look surprised on their face.
Yeah, and not very terrifying.
Yeah.
Even the MindFlayer just kind of looks it looks a little silly and certainly doesn't look.
It looks kind of dopey, really, and then the next thing you know, he's eating your brain.
Speaking of a double underscore, when did the MindFlayer arrive? I mean, it was right there in the beginning.
Yeah. And that's just it. I can't think of a classic monster that didn't show up in first edition.
Ferrum. Okay, Scott McLeay says Ferrum were the tube-shaped flying things that consume magic and live in the Anya Desert. I'm thinking of worm-like things, but those are called Surlan, I think, which were worm people. Do you remember those? and I think they lived
Oh
in the
yeah,
desert too.
they're terrible. They were psionic too, right?
Yeah, and they just looked like worms.
Weren't they slavers?
Humanoids. Most evil monsters are.
Yeah.
If they live below the earth, they 100% were slavers.
Well, were they Spelljammer creatures, like Spelljammer monsters?
I want to say they were like Dark Sun, or maybe even Forgotten Realms, because they had something to do with the desert.
Because they make me think of the Neogi in some ways.
They were psionic. I'm looking at it.
So real quick, we do have some business to take care of.
Oh, okay. Do you have that info? I don't.
I do have that info. So we did a Easy Roller Dice contest, and or giveaway, I should say. Contest is something different. We ran it the first time, and no one took us up on the prize, so we ran it again, and so we have a winner. And that winner is Kevin DeVries, and that includes 2 sets of dice, 1 metal, 1 standard, a dice tray, a dice coffer, and a dice cup. And I believe the dice tray and the dice cup have the cool wolf logo on them emblazoned upon it, and the dice coffer, I think it just holds 1 set of dice, but it's I don't know, it's like a coffin for dice. I know Ted's like, oh, I don't have one of these. so Kevin DeFries will be getting an email from Ted, and then also we have Ted's fan game coming up. That is going to be held June 24th at 8 p.m. and we've got Alex, Callum Power, Chris Holden, Christian Na, Ian Pentel, Christian Williams, Lane Bowen, Daryl Moreno, Bruce, and Scott Sheeran. So I imagine Ted was probably going to take the first, 4 to 6 players who respond to his email and put them into the game. But everyone is going to receive an email. So if I called out your name, keep your eyes peeled for an email from Nerdarchy Ted if you wish to play in one of his one-shots.
Let's see. We got another question from Double Underscore. When did the flump float in DB? I'm going to say the fart pancake is from the Fiend Folio. That's my guess, because there's a lot of weird. Anything that's like just weird that's from first editions, like it's probably in the Fiend Folio. But
They're terrible. Don't forget terrible. So
yeah, that's true. They had like Death Knights were in there. I think Drow were also from the Fiend Folio.
Revenant were in there.
And Get the Yankee. I mean, they're on the cover, right? That's what.
Yes.
Am I thinking of that right? Yeah, Fiend Folio. Yeah. But yeah, I think Death Knight didn't show up until the Fiend Folio, if I recall right.
So, that sounds about right. So Fiend and Folio, that was 2nd edition.
No,
was it first? Was it still first?
I believe it was like a UK only book. That's why it was always so hard to find, because something like that. Like it was produced in the UK, so it was like we only get. That's probably what they feel like. That's probably what the whole rest of the world feels like with all the books that we get.
Maybe they'll do T all by itself, and they'll just do a Tarrasque, a gargantuan Tarrasque.
Yeah,
the old Tarrasque was pretty cool looking.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to say one of the again, it's not specific to D&D, but one of the most just classic monsters that I think's like useful at any level in all sorts of situations is a skeleton. Honestly, I'm just like, hey, if there's dead bones somewhere, evil magic animates them. Boom, you got skeletons.
I thought you were gonna say Tarrasque.
No.
It's good at any level.
But I mean, that's like just those. It's just, there's bones all over the place, so they can be animated by your DM's whim.
A double underscore. Do you think they'll make release dedicated to Dark Sun, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, etc.? Well, I imagine they might do a Dragonlance when the Dragonlance book comes out. I mean, Greyhawk.
I mean, it's got to at least have Draconians, right? Yeah, wait, they're in the Fizzbands, aren't they? So yeah, I mean, other than that, there's not really a whole lot of Dragonlance specific monsters, as I recall.
Yeah, mainly. Matter of fact, they took monsters out.
Yeah, right. There was no orcs, right?
Yeah, no orcs. They had goblins, I think. Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. It's like you only need one horde like sentient race, I think,
Yeah. I mean, you're fighting enough other people, draconians and dragons. What more do you need? They really focused on things like minotaurs.
That's interesting. Chris Hasnick says he still gives skeletons resistance to piercing damage from AD&D. Do they also have the bludgeoning vulnerability that 5e gives them? I'm curious. Greyhawk, I don't know if there's. I mean, like Greyhawk's classic D&D monsters probably just are like the same as D&D's classic monsters. That's where they all got their start. And Dark Sun, that's a whole nother animal, man. I mean, if you're gonna do, it's like that's, it's like they're all kind of tied to the setting and the psionics and the fact that like you're like your resources are low and you don't have all the stuff that you do. So I don't know. I would like to see a Dark Sun back set or something.
Yeah, I feel like Dark Sun's gonna be low priority.
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, everybody's like it's problematic. I don't get why. But you can always play the best edition has Dark Sun.
There you go.
Which I just flipped open and the Sirloin are in that. I'm trying to see if it. Yeah, Aarakocra repairs Dark Sun. Those are just like Dark Sun not only had a lot of unique monsters, just had like weird names that aren't very memorable. So it's like you wouldn't think of them like if I said like, oh, did you ever fight a Cathrang? It's like, what's that?
Dark Sun really put Thragreen on the map too.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they already existed in D&D, but they became. I think they got more popular with Dark Sun.
Oh, for sure. Heck yeah, it was a player option, like right in the core thing.
Oh yeah, it was a player option.
Like, oh, I get to play one of those. I was gonna say, get really weird.
I will say, like 4th edition for monsters, like introduced minions. So, like, if I was gonna say what's iconic about 4E and monsters, to me that would be the thing.
And also, like different kinds of the same monsters in a cohesive unit. You know what I mean? Where it's just like there would be like orc, archers and orc brutes and orc shaman, and like they all work together well. Whereas there's those things now, but I don't think they're really designed together.
There is, but we don't talk about it. So, like, because we talked about it in 4E, and people did not like that. In 4E, they codified the monsters. So, like, they had, like, if you're any particular monster, you had a job, and you did that job. Like you said, like, I remember Skirmisher being one of them. I don't remember all the names.
Brute was one. Solo.
Yeah. So.
Lurker.
Yeah.
Artillery was another type.
So it made sense when they made different ones. They're like, okay, let's fill the different roles so you can use them together, right? And it just made sense. Thri-Kreen are going to be with Spelljammer. At least if the Unearthed Arcana was to be believed.
Yeah. Let's see. Mage's Musing says I haven't played 4E at all, but you're missing a lot there. What were our minions were the same as any other creature. Like you could take any creature and make it a minion because it just had 1 hit point, and if they made a saving throw, nothing happened, and if they failed, they were dead. So you could take the same like threat creatures, but just have like a horde of them.
So the concept behind minions was the problem with D&D is like in order to make your players feel really epic and be like have them just cleave through tons of monsters. You had the only way to do that in previous editions were to use monsters that were so below the players' abilities that they weren't a threat to the players. So what minions did, it gave you the ability to, threaten your players because their attack capabilities, their armor class, was the same as any other monster of that tier or that level. But if you did any damage to them, they just popped. They were gone.
Yeah. So you could have like 15 ogres taking like your 20th level party, which it's like, yeah, sure, that they hit just as hard as regular ogres and stuff too, but you could just like take them down 1 hit they're dead, and you feel like a badass because you just killed 15 ogres.
Yeah, or like the legions of hell. Like there was definitely like devil type creatures that were armored. They look fierce, and you could fight the army of hell, and feel really threatened. But at the same time, especially if you had cool abilities, you could be taking out bunches of them, all at the same time, right? So you can have your Avengers Endgame style combat where you just like tons of mooks to just like wipe the floor with.
That's a great example.
But they can still hurt you.
Yeah, big time. Let's see. And Notorious Vexes. Know any lizard folk focused campaigns like published stuff? I don't know. Nothing really comes to mind. I mean, I think the Danger at Dunwater is one of the Saltmarsh things. I mean, those are all remade first edition adventures, but I think it's Danger at Dunwater, or one of the ones in Ghost of Saltmarsh is not a campaign, but it's a pretty chunky adventure that's all about dealing with the lizard folk tribes.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some ones that have titles that should be, but I don't know that they are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, isn't there like the Temple of the Lizard God or something?
There's against the Cult of the Reptile God, but it's not about lizard folk at all. Spoiler alert! It's a Naga.
Curses.
She is the reptile god, Explictica which is one of the most awesome villain names of all time, I think. And if my Spelljammer players would have ever went back to their planet, they would have found that the Naga who they killed in the Spelljammer ship they took came back and made life hell for all their families because she tracked down who they were and and made them suffer.
I kind of hope they do the Lizardmen of old. I really dug their look, but I think they're mostly good. They seem to be going for bigger monsters, except for the Cockatrice for some reason.
Yeah.
At $100 a pop for the box, I guess you would want bigger monsters as well.
For sure.
So, what classic D&D monster have you used more than any other, do you think?
Let's see. Out of that, if we're just going off the list from those minis, I would probably say Carrion Crawlers, just because I just like them. And if you're underground, there's a good chance there's a Carrion Crawler somewhere lurking around. Overall, out of the list I made, I don't know. It's so tough because I like to change things up. And a lot of them are like Remoraz. It's like, well, those are pretty hard things. So, I mean, I haven't played that many high-level stuff like that. I don't know.
I feel like even
I like to change it up a lot, too.
Like, even off this little list, like the Colwaddle is the only thing I don't think I've really used. And, like, the other ones, like, even the Cockatrices, like, I was playing, like, kind of like I guess I was calling it my family game with my son, one of his friends, my nephew, and Steph. And they encountered a bunch of Cockatrices and that were being herded by I forget what critter. That might have been a Thrycrit again. I don't know, but they were being herded by it, and and they tried. They did. Before they encountered the person like herding them, like they were trying to catch them, and then like one of them got turned to stone. But they got better because they're only Cockatrices.
Yeah, like as a kid, I just played a lot of modules and things, so I just used whatever they're in. And 5th edition, when I homebrew stuff, I have so many. There's just so many third-party things, and we've made up things. It's like I don't really use anything a lot because there's so many monsters that I want to use that I usually just I'll look through like the Tome of Beasts and this thing's cool and this thing's neat. So there's not a lot of repeats. I suppose in that Spelljammer game, the Migo were sort of like their main antagonists, because they worked for the big bads, so they probably faced a lot of those more than any other single thing. Like
Migo, like
they're like
Cthulhian, Lovecraftian.
Yeah, they're in Tome of Beasts. They have an iteration of them. They're basically just like insectoid, like hyper intelligent insect scientist type things that are just like experiment on people. And in the Lovecraft story, they're the ones that like took the people's brains in jars to like flew them to another planet and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I haven't used many beholders, but I've used a couple. You know, Stanley the Beholder made quite a few appearances in the Scarlet Sisterhood.
That's got to be one of the most just terror-inducing classic D&D monsters. Like, I've been a player, and it, you know, and on both sides of the screen, and it's like when I've been a player, like everybody in the party, like even if you're the most like, you know, badass power gamer, stuff like a beholder shit, man. It's like they got a lot of eye rays and do a lot of nasty stuff. So it's like somebody's gonna get effed up in that fight for sure. Sturge is an original creature double underscore. Yep.
I don't know. Like beholders are kind of weird, right? Like. Because like I don't think of the eye rays as much as I think of the cone of anti-magic, but like the anti-magic is so hard to use because you can't ray anything in the cone, right? So like it's like the safest place to stand is in the anti-magic.
True, but then all your stuff doesn't work either, so it's not safe as well. I mean, I guess a beholder showed up in that Spelljammer campaign lab, but he was a lounge singing crime lord that they took jobs from, so nobody ever fought him.
I do like NPC beholders.
Yeah, you know, that's one of my like to me that's like one of the iconic things about Spelljammer is just like, look, all the monsters, they're just alien races. I mean, I remember in the original box set artwork, there was like a picture of just a tavern, and there's like illithid sitting there sipping, like, I think they're smoking a hookah, and there's just like, you know, they're just hanging out there. It's like, hey, if you meet me in a dungeon, I'll eat your brain, but right now I'm just grabbing a drink after work, so.
Double underscore wants to know Sturges were original creatures. Yes, they were. So, but yeah, like, I mean, first of all, Sturges are super cool. I love using Sturges. And also, I do remember fighting Sturges and them being really freaking annoying, you know, back in first edition. But but like the Cockatrice and the Sturges, like I hope if they're putting these in these boxes that are $100, they at least put a bunch of them in, and it's just not like one to kind of like because they're tiny anyway.
Right. Well, you know, that being said, like I said, I mean, a lot of these WizKids things are just collectible, right? It's like, are you gonna, you know, you paid $200 for like that hand of Vecna. It's like, are you gonna use it in your game? No, it's probably just gonna sit on the shelf.
Now I am. It must be used. Or what is it? $400-$500?
So you got to be one badass evil son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. That's my favorite TED quote.
You'd be like, and you know, a hand reaches around the corner of the door, and then you take the hand of Vecna. And you
oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. You know, that's a great DM like foreshadowing too. It's like, you know, especially if you have any older players that know about Vecna lore and stuff. But a couple of years ago, I ran a game for my brother and his friend, and they hadn't played D&D in like 20 years. And you know, it's like they ran afoul of some cultists, and there was like, so like, you know, like they were missing a hand or they were eye patches and stuff. And like right away, they were both like, "Oh shit, man! Like these are Vecna. Like I don't want to mess with these guys." Like they remembered that, so that can really put the fear in the players when you start alluding to things like that.
Yeah, underscore that is kind of how the cone works. Like no magic, including its own, works in the cone. It's kind of weird, like the way like to use it effectively. Anyway, but that being said, there are definitely ways you can use it to really screw up your players. Like, oh, you have a fly spell on, and go look at those guys real quick. You know, or like your really magic-y characters, like your wizards and stuff. You can just shut them right down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the beholder, like, you know, that's a tactical move on the DM too. It's just like, well, you could have the beholder close its eye, which I would consider like it's gonna, you know, it's not like it just blinks. It's like, well, if I made that decision, it's closed until the next time it gets a turn. So.
There's rules for it. Opening and closing the eye. Yeah, it's like a bonus action or something.
Oh, well, there you go.
So yeah, so it's definitely part of it.
No,
Yeah,
it says at the start of each of its turns, it decides which way the cone faces and whether it's active. So yeah, I mean, you can turn it off, but it's like then it's at a major detriment because then you can unload with the magic. So, although I mean the eye rays, like, couldn't it, just turn to the side and shoot? Like, if the party's right here, it's just like, well, I'll just look over here.
I guess on its turn it could technically, because like it doesn't even really require movement to turn, I guess. But yeah.
Like things like that are where I feel like having a map in minis is
crucial.
Yes, it just makes things more fair and stuff, and I think so. Which again is another bonus for E, but hey, do I know? But yeah, I mean, just to, it's like, well, so that it's clear to all the players. You can be like, no, I didn't say it turned, or like, no, it just turned like 44 degrees to the left or whatever. It's like, no, dude, you have it.
Yeah, just put the mini out, put the cone out.
Yeah. But the best thing about a beholder, especially in 5e, is that its eye rays are just random, so you don't have to feel bad about it. As the DM's like, I didn't choose the death ray, I just rolled the die.
I just rolled the die. I was so sad when we fought the beholder, and I belatedly realized that my mirror image would actually are targets for the eye rays.
Okay.
I was like, curses.
Let's see. Interest Vexes are thinking of making a lizard folk style invasion setting. That sounds great already. I'm into it. Underground waterways, yeah. Spreading swamp terrain being used in invading. But it could be used suggestions for pacing.
It really depends exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. Like, how long is the campaign going to be? How much of the campaign are the lizard folk going to be, if it's the whole thing, and if you want to start slowly with like small incursions and skirmishes, and then kind of like work your way up. Like, you could totally do like alligators in the sewers, but instead of alligators, they're lizard folk. And
I guess. Oh, sorry.
Even I was gonna say in the City of Mages or Streets of Mages that Jim Davis ran for Saber Dice, one of the players played a lizard folk that came from the sewers, which was kind of a fun concept.
Yeah. I guess, I wasn't sure how to answer, but I was thinking of a post I wrote a while ago. It was like, if you have a MindFlayer campaign, flaunt it. And the idea is, I think theme campaigns like that can get a lot more juice if the players are aware. And I get that's like, you might want it to be like, oh, this like slow and secretive incursion, but them knowing that the campaign is about a lizard folk invasion, at least you could do that. And then I would have like a set number of sessions, like say you're gonna play like a 12, that's what we often do, like 12 sessions. Well, then then you can just be explicit, like every session I am going to advance how far they are getting, and that, and like the things that the players do in between then might change what that is, but just that they know like every session they're gonna get closer to their goal. It might not be as close as if you didn't do anything, but they will be advancing. So that way it's like you can kind of build that tension and they know what they're facing, and then they have some idea what they can do as well.
So, all right, so some of the things that I'm getting from this, one, the idea is the swamp itself is advancing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like the swamp is, expanding and overrunning. And that is actually great, because I would start with that, before I start with the lizard folk themselves.
Right.
And then, but like really soon after, right? But because like they're going to investigate like, oh, what's going on with the swamp. Or I would do alligators in the sewers. I just like that idea. Maybe both.
Yeah, like I said, I just advocate for like theme campaigns. Just tell the players what they are, because it just helps build tension if they know that's what. And you can still do what you said, like, oh, the first inklings they have, in the first of your first session, it's like that's the inciting incident that like, oh, the swamp just like maybe some town on the borders of the swamp just gone, and like they could tie the PCs to that in some way. But at least when they know, I feel like when players know what the gist is, then they're going to be more on board with like wanting to fight that thing and not and taking the hooks and stuff, and like knowing like, okay, well, that's what we're supposed to be investigating. That's my feeling.
I think that's also a really good idea. Like an opening scene that would be kind of awesome is like a skiff kind of sailing up towards the the city. And like at night, with the fog rolling in off the water, there's a lone figure holding a torch that is, on the skiff, and the skiff is actually a giant snapper turtle shell upside down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as the skiff gets right to the docks or whatever, the creature says a single word and points at the city, and maybe it's in its language or draconic, or whatever you want to use, and they either, and maybe someone knows, maybe they have to figure out what the word is, and it's like conquest or something like that, but it kicks off the skiff, pushing it further, and then it dives into the water and swims off. Well, the boat is full of the heads of explorers that were sent out to figure out why the swamp is encroaching upon the civilized lands.
Yeah, and Chris Hausnick makes a great point too with regional effects, which, hey, you could just steal those things, and they don't have to be tied to the thing, but to that point of Black Dragon's regional effect is like the land within 6 miles of its lair takes twice as long as normal to traverse, which is an awesome just terrain challenge too. So it's like if everything in 6 miles is difficult terrain, that's right there. Even a low level adventures, like that's going to be a tremendous challenge. Plants grow thick and twisted, and the swamps are thick with reeking mud. Water sources within a mile are fouled. And just fog lightly obscures the land within 6 miles. It's like just even if you take out the Black Dragon, that's like super evocative, super challenging, and really cool stuff to just throw in.
Yeah, the newsletter we sent out yesterday was basically about terrain, and most of my part of it was like, hey, rip off these cool regional effects,
for sure,
and lair actions from monsters. The work is done for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot. I think I compiled all the regional effects into a post. I think it's called like layer actions or anytime actions. But so I just grabbed all the layer actions and also regional effects from the Monster Man and just put them in that post.
Unfortunately, there's not like a way so I use D&D Beyond for most things. No surprise there. Unfortunately, that's not one of the filters, and I wish it was.
Yeah, you can go to our website, and we did it for you.
You grabbed all the...
Yeah, it was. I originally started off I was like, I'm going to compile all the layer actions. I was like, man, I might as well just copy all the regional ones effects as well. So I just put them on.
Because
partly for myself, for that very reason. It's like, well,
if a monster has a layer action, it might have a regional action, but it doesn't go. It doesn't always work the other way around.
Right. Yes, that's a good way to look if you want to start looking for them. Just if you have D&D Beyond, because you can look for things that have a layer, and usually if they have a layer, they probably have regional effects as well. It's good possibility.
It is definitely a good possibility.
And that's like what I was saying with the Mummy Lord. It's like the stat block, they look like wimps, but it's like they have really powerful layer actions and regional effects. So it's like, and, I mean, how often is it not going to be in its layer and stuff? So.
Yeah, it's one of those monsters that just like keeps coming, unless you know how to destroy it.
Yeah, you got to find its canopic jar.
And then
their regional, their layer actions, like if you cast any spell of 4th level or lower, it just fails if you fail a concentration and you take necrotic damage.
Which again, like all those things are really cool. Also, Tasha's,
and if you take any treasure from its layer, you're cursed until its return.
Tasha's Cauldron to Everything is a great section, in the back as well for like phenomena and hazards and.
Oh yeah, for sure. The supernatural phenomena and stuff. There's all kind of cool shit.
I mean, I was writing my newsletter and I was writing up a thing about like, here's some things you could do if you had a haunted forest, right? And then I opened up Tasha's and I was like, oh, or you could just use this.
Yeah.
Because
that's what it's all about, man. It's just layering in all those things so that even if you do just have like a roll initiative and fight, there's all this other stuff going on that makes those things more challenging, and it also makes the time between the fights interesting too, because you got to traverse that terrain and wonder, why is this swamp just over, swallowing up towns and things like that. It's scary.
So with that, it's about that time.
Oh, wow.
We're going to get out of here. We're done talking about classic monsters for now, but we will be back tomorrow. But before we do go, I do want to thank D&D Beyond again. They're our sponsor for the channel. You can help support the channel by supporting the sponsors. But we'll be back tomorrow night with our Zoom Mafia RPG, where we play a very hacked, powered by the apocalypse game. That'll be 8 o'clock, same time, same place, and then we'll be back on Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time for a live chat with Lost Lauren Games. We'll be talking to those folks, so come on back. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.